Pull it up.
What I know for sure is that ICE agents are grabbing people off the street without identifying themselves.
Pull it up where they just
you
pull
deny that.
people off the street.
Do you deny?
Do it. Fucking do it right now. Do it right now.
Are grabbing people off the street without identifying themselves.
Do it right now.
You deny that. Do you deny that?
Pull it up. Yeah, I deny it. Pull it up right now.
You deny ICE agents are grabbing people.
Pull it up.
ICE agents grabbing people without identifying. There's videos of all this shit, but
pull it up.
Do you want to watch some videos of it?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, there's videos of women confronting mass ICE agents performing arrests and demand to see identification.
Performing arrest. You know why what you need to perform an arrest, Ryan? You need a warrant or any probable cause, you dumb fuck.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They're not giving that. They're not showing that.
They are. They can't arrest people without it, you dumb son of a bitch. You are the dumbest person I've ever met, Ryan.
You have no idea what's happening.
And I say that having talked to Duck for 2 fucking hours.
Such a simp for Donald Trump. You believe everything he says.
I don't believe shit Trump says. I don't believe anything that I don't watch.
It sounds like you've been swallowing his cum for the past year.
Oh, what is that? Like, you think that's serious? Do you watch the Senate subcommittee hearings?
Not all of
them.
Or
do you just whatever libs of TikTok tell you to fucking say? That's what you say?
Libs of TikTok is a right-wing
outlet, I'm waiting for the fucking proof.
You don't even know what you're referencing.
You just said that you have proof. You said you want to watch the videos, and I said yes. Where's the fucking video, Ryan?
I don't know what you're fucking referencing.
Where's the fucking video, Ryan? Where's it at? You got nothing.
Videos of ICE agents detaining people? Google it. There's
no detaining people without a warrant, just randomly grabbing people off the street. That's what you said. Pull it up.
There are. Yes, there are videos of
Pull it up. Put it in the back chat. Let's go. Chop.
Okay, hang on.
Come on now. My boys work fast, right?
I mean, I don't have people to find stuff for me, so
I don't either. Still waiting.
Well, keep waiting, dude. I'm sorry. I have to type
again. You're a fucking liar.
You're acting like because you haven't seen a video.
Get the fuck off the internet. You fucking liar. Get the fuck off the internet.
Other people have seen this shit.
Get the fuck off the internet because you lie and you get caught lying. That's the problem. You get caught because you can't argue with someone like me. You can't because I know because I watch the hearings because I don't read the libs of TikTok daily presser like you do.
TikTok is a right-wing media outlet, dude. You don't know what you're talking about.
I literally don't listen to a single right-wing media outlet at all. So fuck off. Get the fuck off the internet, Ryan.
So you just listen to the right-wing politicians.
Get the fuck off the internet or prove your shit. You made a bold-ass claim. You spent 3 fucking hours like bullshitting every fucking body and wasting the goddamn time. Prove your shit or shut the fuck up and get off the internet.
I don't have to.
Mayor of Los Angeles was quoted as saying they're pulling up to Home Depots and just taking people.
Yeah, I don't care about a quote by a political official. I want literally a police
this
report
is a fucking stupid tactic, Grid.
Just sees people.
Bring me the exact piece of evidence. Bring me the exact piece of evidence. Like, shut the fuck up,
Should be
man.
pretty
Come
easy.
on.
I literally
have the exact document.
Where's CNN?
You're making just as much of a claim.
Here's this guy. There's no warrant. Where's it? Where's that at? You got that? You got a politician saying that people are doing it? Yeah, sure. Okay, I believe that.
Has it been happening or not?
Did I say, hey, Trump said this? No, I fucking
Has U.S. citizens been deported yet? Has people been deported without due process? Has it been happening or not? It's not out the fucking left field, right? You go and talk shit over you just think, is it? It's been happening or not?
That everybody was
why'd they bring Kilmer back, Grid?
No due process. Did they bring his ass back?
Grid, why'd they have to bring him back?
Why did they bring him back? To face,
why'd they have to?
I guess because we wanted him back. I don't know why. He was a fucking criminal.
He should have left him in El Salvador. He didn't get a hearing. He didn't get due process, dude.
How do we? I don't necessarily know that. I don't know.
I've got a better question.
Kind of fucking out on that.
I've got a better question. Why did like an hour ago a federal judge take away Trump's ability to use the National Guard in California? You know the answer. The answer is because it's all fucking lies.
The Supreme Court said that he could use the National Guard, though.
And it's not lies. I mean, I'm 30 minutes from the riots, and they moved to Santa Ana just recently, which is like 15 minutes for me. Every Home Depot I go to and U-Haul, there's illegal immigrants on the corners, and that's fine, right? It's kind of weird because, like, I kind of want to step this back up in the sense that ICE has a policy where they don't do clean sweeps. Like they just don't go to Home Depots and they don't go to U-Hauls. And if there's a protest going on, they may, like, if things are happening, they may grab people, they may detain them, they may ask them for ID. And if they don't have the ID, they're going to do a little bit of due process on that, right? Make sure they have a green card or something. Otherwise, they're going to be detained. But Trump isn't even going after the people that are here illegally, even though they're illegal. They're 100% illegal. He's going after the illegals that have done illegal criminal actions after being illegal, which is just freaking crazy. And Ryan, you're sitting here like defending people that are illegal, saying, "Oh, we can't get rid of the illegals. We should only get rid of the illegals."
I'm saying
if they've done something illegal after already doing something illegal.
You have to go through the legal channels. That's all I'm saying.
They're
I don't
literally
care.
But they don't.
So
not everyone does. Not everyone
just
does.
like stop this like idea like it's bad to like defend people just because they're worse off or they've done bad things. If someone went through a prison, just in general, the principle. If someone like went through a prison right now and just started shooting people in the head, and somebody was like, "Well, who cares? They're just prisoners."
That's not what's being said.
That's
the
second dumbest thing said on the panel tonight.
You guys are making this huge fallacy of composition, whereas like you're like, oh, well,
you're making a fallacy right now by using a straw man.
They don't deserve.
This message is sponsored in part by.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you, Chuck. That was from earlier. He was still testing the dono goal to see if it works. It is working. So please continue filling that bad boy up. We got 3 more to make it to 10. And speaking of, we got some more coming in. K2 Keep on Trucking coming in with a big 5 says, all those illegals that stole Social Security numbers so they can get jobs in that Nebraska food plant and causing pains to the citizens. That's not very neighborly.
Yep, and that's why they did a raid there.
What's that?
I said that's why they did a raid in Omaha.
Speedy Lee says, I'm just glad Ryan doesn't blend in with his background anymore. Summer had been good for all.
I appreciate it, Speedy Lee. It was actually the lights that I was using. I have these like RGB lights, and they were all on like the bright light because I couldn't I had to like reset them and I didn't know how, and I eventually figured it out. But like what happened was they were all stuck on like the white light setting, but now I've got them like set to some specific colors that show up. So I'm actually a pretty tan person, as it turns out.
That's fair. I know my light can affect whether I look like I'm a Casper or not.
In fact, I was on Chaotic Truth's panel the other day, and some white supremacist dudes were telling me that I'm not white enough, or that I'm not American because because of the way I look. I was like, wow, I never got that one before. You know,
was that Orthodox guy?
No, Orthodox guy. He's usually chiller than that with me, but I believe that he thinks that as well.
That's fair. Lawrence with the big 5 says, Sarah, I see Ryan is making someone else mad, and Grid has a reputation of being calm, cool, and collected.
Not with me. Every time I see him, he's freaking out and like crying.
It's actually, as long as you know what points make Grid mad, you can trigger him very easily. There's a little button. It's hiding, but if you find it, once you push it, it's like full explosion mode.
I got my finger right up in there on that button.
When he's angry, he is unbelievably hot when he gets mad. He gets all flushed. He starts kind of bouncing in his seat a little bit. And he's like,
yes, when he starts doing, he does one of these. Like all the time.
I represent the angry gun-toting meat-eating fucking people, and it's a small lobby, but we're powerful. And
I'll accept that.
You know what my favorite part is like knowing everybody's trigger points and what gets them going, and like the mannerisms, the way they start talking, their faces, like all of.
Did you just say mannerisms?
Mannerisms.
Mannerisms.
Mannerism is a little bit better. I think mannerism is a
mannerism.
I can't.
I have mannerisms.
I do have a quick question for Grid. So the other day, Grid, I saw the crazy hot chick matrix.
Yes,
I'm sure everybody on this panel has
shot
seen
down
that,
the
right?
street from me, by the way.
Like a How
I looked at that. And we were watching on another panel, and I was like, you know what? That looks like a young Grid. I was like, is that you?
No, it's not me, but I know the guys in the video. One of the guy who actually is responsible for that video he owned Tactical Response. James, he passed last year, and just horrible. But he was a cool dude. He was a cool dude, and that was shot at Tactical Response, and they were just fucking around. That's why that guy has the pistol on him the whole time, is because they were literally like in the middle of a class, and then they went to lunch or something, and James is like, "Hey, let's do that crazy hot matrix thing you're always talking about." And the guy doing that, the guy that's acting that out is, I think he's a Fed of some kind. But
it's a good story, Grid. Hey, can we go back to that last super chat? That was, I don't think we read it.
Oh yeah, I apologize. Sarcastic Warlock says, "You guys need an actual fat." Say it for me.
Fascist.
Thank you. Who won't apologize? I can be your hero, baby. I can be your hero, baby. Shame it'd be off tone considering the setup is a straw man from the get-go.
You know, I would appreciate that if people who unapologetically identify as fascists. Actually, I've talked to quite a few of these people over the past few years, believe it or not. A surprising amount of people who shamelessly identify as fascists, and most of them tend to identify along the lines that I'm using the word. I usually seem to understand their ideology fairly well. They seem to agree when I describe their feelings about it, and you know, those are the people who are owning the label. So I trust their judgment a bit, and usually it's the people who feel really strongly about those beliefs but don't want to think of themselves as fascist who fight the most against me using those labels. So
that's fair. P. Fletcher with a big 5. Gauntlet, what is your take on the same bad actors on the left encouraging the left violence? Examples: Maxine Waters, AOC, etc. I don't follow politics anymore enough to care or enough to put my opinion on that specific question. But if somebody on stage wants to go for it, Ryan.
Yeah. First of all, I don't think that Maxine Waters or AOC is encouraging violence. Absolutely not. I don't think they are. I think people laugh because they're convinced that they are, because they just hear the same narratives. But AOC and Maxine Waters are absolutely not encouraging violent protests. But yeah, anyone who is, I disavow. I don't think they should. I think it's playing right in Donald Trump's hand. And I think that a lot of people, if there are people out there who are cheering on people, encouraging them to be violent, I would be suspicious of where their loyalties actually lie, because they are absolutely playing into Donald Trump's hand blatantly. It's very obvious what Trump wants, and he wants to escapulate violence.
So you don't think they're playing into Newsom's hands right now, where Newsom's going, "Hey, I don't approve of any of this squashing of the riots right now. I want these riots to keep on going." You don't think he's
when has he said that? When
he said nothing about riots. The protests.
He said that.
Newsom has said explicitly, right? Never use violence, over and over. He said it over and over.
But what is he doing?
Show me the quote where AOC encouraged violence or rioting.
Yeah,
because we can do the show me game too.
It's funny, you guys.
We can yell show me.
Allow me to interrupt for just a moment, Evan. I know you have a question, and I have somebody backstage that I specifically would like to bring on. Ask your question.
All right. Just kind of like getting to like the point earlier about like the subjectiveness of truth. It just feels like a lot of the early fascists, like they believe that might makes, kind of like what Andrew Wilson kind of like sort of thinks, but without Andrew Wilson having morality as kind of like the Christian morality as the thing, like a lot of the fascists were more atheistic. And so I'd say like in this post-truth world, it seems like the whole thing you're kind of like talking about is kind of like the acknowledgement that they could do it, they have the means to do it, but that they won't do it because it's not the right time. Is that kind of like what? Is that kind of like the observation you've made?
I don't think so exactly. I think it's to some degree it's that it's like slowly, increasingly normalizing, like the more explicit like law breaking and violence. Like, I mean, you see people like cheering on, like, oh, they just need to open fire into the crowds. They just need to like shoot the protesters. I mean, even Trump himself, like a few years ago when he was in office the first time, was saying shoot him in the leg. He's just talking about peaceful protesters. So I think that this kind of normalization of violence is pretty in line that fascist tendency for sure. If that's what you're
that was an observation. Never shoot anyone in the leg, and there's no such thing as a warning shot.
Yeah.
Do you think they're really trying to shut down the protesters, or do you think they're trying to shut down the people that have jumped in behind the protesters that are causing all the havoc?
But hasn't the LAPD explicitly said that they're handling
or do you think the protest? I mean, you have to admit the peaceful protesters are not breaking into stores. They're actually protesting. Would you agree with that? Right?
Yes, of course. But I also agree.
But would you also not agree that there are people breaking into stores?
Right?
Yes, as long as you make the distinction, you're good.
They can handle it.
We're almost on day 7, so obviously they can't.
Evan, are you done, my darling?
One last kind of like thing when it came to like your point on like the statues coming up during like the Reconstruction period. I would say that you're kind of like making a causation sort of thing, because during that time period, that's when air conditioning was kind of like created in the South, so people could go and be more productive down there, as opposed to just suffering in the heat and not having like a way to go and industrialize more. So I think like when they got the material prosperity from having more jobs and more like steady income than just agricultural farming and plantations, they were able to put up these statues.
Farmers make bank, though.
No, that's not true.
True, but
this has been written about extensively. You can even find their own words. Some of the statues even have like plaques that say how they're trying to honor the people who fought for the white race. Like this, there are a plethora of books on this.
Effigy, what statue?
I could find it. I think it's one of them in North Carolina.
I read like a PDF about this a while back because I was on a debate panel where I brought this up and I had to pull up like evidence, and I did, and I'll have to find that document again. But if you guys follow up with me, I will hunt it down. But yeah, I mean, it's not just that one document, obviously. Like this has been, and actually it is wrong. I mentioned Reconstruction, but I actually probably shouldn't. I think when I dug into it, most of them didn't emerge during Reconstruction. Most of them emerged much later, like specifically in like the 1920s and 30s. And again, but the motivation was pretty explicit.
All right,
it was saying, "Hey, like you're not welcome here."
Hold up, sir. The 20s and 30s were late Reconstruction.
Okay, late Reconstruction, sure.
So.
Well, anyway,
but not like immediate Reconstruction, not like early Reconstruction, like not during the
I'd love to see all these statues.
Reconstruction was from
right, and it's not a coincidence that time period just happens to correlate with the rise of Jim Crow laws, the disenfranchisement of Black Americans.
By the way,
increased racial violence, lynching as a norm. Like
it is not a coincidence.
I'm gonna fact check you there, Caucasian. It didn't. The Reconstruction period ended way before the start of the 20th century.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds wrong, but yeah. So, I'm not. History is not my expert. I'm still learning a lot of stuff, and I love it. I've ever since like, when I was in school, I really struggled to.
The Reconstruction period ended before the 20th century.
Yes.
So when did the Civil War begin?
So the Civil War started in 1861, and ended in late 61, and ended in 65, early to mid 65, and so
Reconstruction was when?
So Reconstruction was from after the end of the Civil War, which was 1865, up until 1877, 1880, somewhere in that. But I don't think it's. Yeah, I mean it's because it
ended it.
And what's that?
What ended it?
The Democrat.
Well, one of the things that ended the Reconstruction era is the fact that the federal government stopped with its aggressive penalization of the South for the war, and as a result, though, you did have a lot of things like Jim Crow laws come as a result of Reconstruction, and the policies lasted and infected into the early 20th century. But to say that it went into that time, it's a very specific time. It's about a decade.
That was excellently done. I appreciate it.
Evan, would you like to tell the panel to have a good evening and all that fun stuff?
Have a good evening, have a good morning, or whatever. It was good talking with you all. Ryan, thank you for giving me my thoughts. Well,
yeah, of course.
Bye, Evan.
Who is our special guest? Mr.
Ding,
Rob
ding,
Noir.
Oh,
ding,
yeah,
ding.
Rob.
What a nightmare.
Hey, yeah. Can I wanted to ask a question before I start. Can you guys hear me? Just make sure my audio is okay.
We can,
Yeah,
Rob.
okay.
Yeah, we can.
Is Coder allowed to donate money to Sarah to get me put in the back so he doesn't get wrecked here? Is that something he's personally allowed to do?
I will. I promise
Broke
you.
do it even if I wanted
I
to,
promise
Rob.
I
Let's
will
go.
buy the whole fucking panel if that happens.
Okay, just wondering. So Coder, I do apologize. I was doing another thing with grid and stuff, so I didn't get to hear sort of your hour statement. So if I say anything that you've already covered, I do
We've been
apologize.
talking immigration all fucking night.
Yeah. So, but one of the things I heard while I was in the back there that you said that the chief of police said that they have enough without the National Guard. Is that correct?
I said the LAPD did at least. I didn't say the police specifically. But,
Okay, so there you would acknowledge that there could be different opinions within the LAPD, and if we had the chief publicly say he wasn't sure if they had enough people, that would be concerning, right?
When did he say that?
So about 4 days ago, I was watching live, 3 or 4 days ago. I believe it was night 3 of the Democrat-led insurrections, the mass violence that we see occurring in LA and all around the country.
Crazy,
Interestingly enough, though, he was asked a lot of questions pointedly by a sycophantic press that was going for a narrative. One of the questions they asked was, do you think that you need the National Guard? And he said, we didn't night 1 and night 2. However, he also was asked, do you think the National Guard will cause an escalation? He's like, I don't know. Traditionally, I've lived through a lot of these riots, and what tends to happen is night 1, it seems to be sort of benign. Then night 2, it escalates. And by night 3, oftentimes it's getting out of control. So we're not sure if we will need the Guard. And his implication that he was making was, 1, not only were they not sure if they would need the Guard, but secondly, he anticipated things getting much worse. So I guess I would ask you then, that seems to be an admission that they weren't saying, at least the chief or whoever the gentleman, I think it was the chief that I was listening to, didn't rebuke wanting the Guard there and said that he would be willing to use them if it would be beneficial. More importantly, though, I'll ask you is, do you think that the riots have escalated since night 3 or have they declined in LA specifically?
Since night 3?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know since night 3.
I mean, I think based on what I've watched, and I've watched them every night, especially in the evening, it hasn't been as bad as a lot of people anticipated, which probably is. Now, you have to ask yourself, I'm not making a definitive claim here, but if it is true, what the Democrats are saying was that the National Guard being brought in would escalate the situation. Why hasn't it?
Okay, so to be clear, what I think people are saying is that bringing the National Guard is an attempt to escalate the situation. And so thankfully, everyone's been pointing this out. And that's probably why it hasn't, because people are making sure that we don't let it. People the LAPD is probably cracking down. People are getting arrested like they were supposed to. It's just people are just doing their jobs and shit's working out.
So you think
because most of the protests are peaceful. That's why. That's your answer. Most of the protests are simply peaceful.
I don't. That response is a non sequitur. When you said that the LAPD. Because most of the people right now most of the January 6ers were peaceful. Most of the people, you could say this about anything. This was the same bullshit argument that was made about Black Lives Matter. No one gives a shit about the peaceful protests. What we give a shit is that there are hundreds of people out there that aren't peaceful. So if there's 5 million people that take to the streets and only 1 million engage in violence, you would say mostly are peaceful. Yes. You would still be able to.
No way you're saying 1 in 5 BLM protesters was engaging in violence.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that technically the language.
Just to be clear, because that's what you just said, but yeah.
I'm saying that technically the language could still be used. Most are peaceful. It's only 1 million engaged in violence.
But you agree it wasn't 1 in 5,
no,
right? It
was
he's saying 1 in 5. He's saying 1 in 5. It doesn't matter if it's 1 million or 1,000.
I understand. I understand the point he's making. I'm just saying, you agree that it was much smaller than that. It was cartoonishly.
So
right, but you're missing. But you're missing his point though, which is your point.
Right, I can make my point.
The point that they were mostly peaceful and that their violence that was happening can still be dealt with?
So when we look at Black Lives Matter, for example, and the riots that we saw going into the 2020 election, I believe it was Stanford, though I may be wrong about the university, that put out this study that was used over and over by the left that said mostly peaceful. In fact, 94% of the locations of Black Lives Matter. You agree with that, right? 94% of the locations were peaceful.
Sure. That sounds right. Yeah.
The problem was that meant 6 or 7% weren't, which they said was, I believe the exact number was 223 locations of violence that occurred during Black Lives Matter. Now
across the entire country during the biggest civil rights protest in American history. That's amazing. Actually, that's pretty low.
223 cities engaging in violence is amazing to you?
Well, I mean, out of how many cities?
Well, how many
you said,
cities?
Wait, hang on. You said 223 locations, not 223 cities. Is that?
Yeah, it's kind of hyperbolic to say that the whole city is burning or the whole city is.
Well, what's the metric for violence?
Wait, who
like
said?
There would be like some of those locations could be in the same city, right?
I don't know exactly the methodology of the study. My assumption was
I suspect that when you say
wasn't-
locations instead of cities.
No, I
What's
don't.
what's the
believe that's
scale
case.
used for the word violence?
Why is it like? Go ahead, everyone. I'm sorry. You guys can make my argument for me. Go for it.
Well, Ryan, I can tell you there was $2 billion in property damage, hundreds of murders, and throughout the entire Summer of Love, that whole year, BLM protests, there were 300 felony convictions in the United States for events relating to those protests. So I think we can both agree that we're not exactly holding the people who were torching apartment buildings with moms and kids inside.
How are we asserting that those were the people who got the felony charges?
$2 billion in property damage.
How are you asserting those aren't the people who got the felony? Anyone who got caught was definitely get charged. I mean, absolutely.
No,
it's not true.
Yeah, they were.
Wasn't there about 15,000 arrests?
I use convictions. I use convictions. I use very specific.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, yeah. So 300.
Do you use pardons?
That means way more people were charged, and
they were charged, and then the DAs were instructed to drop the charges, and they did again.
Or they did on their own accord.
Drop charges against people who did arson, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Please provide something that says the DAs were instructed to let them know.
Like to let arsonists to drop charges against arsonists. Where's that?
I mean,
Well, you know.
Yeah, bro. I don't have a study.
We're talking.
My ass.
I don't expect you to pull it up right now, but I just don't believe you.
I mean, that's literally what Grid was doing earlier. Show me. Prove it.
No, Ryan was making an unfalsifiable claim. If a million
no, it was two people making unfalsifiable claims, and neither of them really provided anything. They both said this person said this, this person said this. No one provided anything further. That's how it went.
If a million people get deported, there's going to be at least one mistake. There's probably going to be at least 10 mistakes. There's probably going to be 100 mistakes.
Hey, thanks everyone for having me here. Appreciate it. You guys are making my arguments better than me. See you guys. Enjoy.
That's true. See you, Rob.
Sure.
And Rob,
you can break a few eggs. I think if we deported 1 million people and half of them were here legally, that would be like the horrific, right? But if we deport 1 million people and it turns out 100 of them were here illegally, that's probably fine. We can probably fly them back. We can probably apologize to them.
Here's the thing.
Yeah, 100 legal people were deported accidentally.
Damn, Rob waved the white flag early tonight.
Here's the thing that we know, Ryan, is that if a lot of these Democrat prosecutors were not going to charge people for stealing $900 of crap from Walgreens, why the hell would they arrest someone burning down a building?
My understanding is that the $900 limit was changing. It was like instead of a felony, it was a misdemeanor, right?
Yes, misdemeanor versus felony. Yes, that's absolutely true. And the law has been changed back, so that should be handled now.
Well, but my point is there was a point in time when they weren't prosecuting crimes, probably because they were too busy prosecuting Trump. Or making statements about Trump or whatever. But here's the thing is that we do know it did happen. No, it's not Effigy.
That is very unreasonable, actually.
No, it isn't.
The entire Justice Department focused down on
that's not what I said. You know what I'm saying.
God.
You know what I
know what you said.
Terrible.
Oh, you guys are so bad with the strawman and conflating.
It's kind of it's hard to have a good faith interpretation of what you just said, to be fair. Shit. I'm sorry.
Well, you guys don't argue in good faith, so let's just be honest.
Well, I mean, I think I do.
No, you don't. You don't.
Okay.
So Ryan,
I guess.
Ryan, let's hear your view, right? So we're on day 6, going into 7. Military is about to come in. How would have you handled this?
Well, it sounds like Rob's saying that it hasn't been.
I'm not asking what Rob's saying. I'm asking what you like. If you were governor of California,
I would let the LAPD do their job, which sounds like they're doing just fine.
7 days of looting.
Why are we pretending that protests that turn violent is some kind of new thing in America?
No,
it's not.
Well, hold on. What you would do is follow the jurisdiction and the law that says the National Guard comes in when the state governor says that, requests them. And that's what a district court just ruled and said they are ordered to turn the jurisdiction back over to Gavin Newsom. So how about following the law? I mean, that would be a nice start.
Yes. And I think this is something that especially on the right, you see this inconsistency on their rhetoric for state rights, right? They'll talk in one way about state rights and then another one they won't. And it's the same thing with Democrats and the left. You guys don't want ICE to do their jobs. You don't want which I understand the military, because that is way beyond reasonable.
I mean, in theory, I'm not against the guard being used under any circumstance. I just think you have to follow the jurisdiction of how the law works. That's it.
Exactly, right. And the thing of it is so they were okay when the fucking FBI came in, and I know some of you were either not born or you were too young to remember this but I remembered it when they went into Waco, right? And the local sheriff said, "Hey, I'll handle this." Ruby Ridge was the same way, and also I would argue
wasn't it the ATF?
Well, the ATF was the one. The ATF was the one that was there to serve the warrant, or came for the warrant. But they had an FBI sniper team there. The guy that actually shot in at Waco was at Ruby Ridge.
But what were they there to
Ridge
investigate?
Is a very interesting story. But Waco, they could have arrested Koresh anytime they wanted to. That was Janet Reno trying to be a badass.
Exactly, the Janet Reno. That was
I think they were trying to like slowly build a bigger case, probably, right? I mean, I was young, I was alive, but I was young, so the details for me are hazy.
Well, the reasons they didn't rush the compound were they said that they had like an arsenal and that people were going to get hurt, but that
there's also the children
ramming the whole compound with a fucking tank.
Yeah,
there's a big question over whether or not the tank caused the fire or whether it was a flamethrower that caused the fire.
Right. And I don't think we can definitively say one way or the other on that effigy. I think anybody that does, I think, that becomes a whole different thing. But my point is, this is inconsistency because a lot of Republicans, a lot of people on the right, they'll say, that we want state rights when it comes to abortion laws. We want state rights when it comes to a lot of these different things, and then they're not obliging the state rights of the governor. The only caveat I'd put to that is that if the governor is acting in dereliction of his duty, either because of cowardice or incompetence. My point is, when
as a citizen of California, is there is complete incompetence, and so like Mike, let's pretend like you opened an Italian restaurant a year ago in downtown LA, right? And you put all your money into that. Now it's been looted, it's been destroyed. Hopefully you have insurance. Maybe you can recover, maybe you can't. But when it comes down to like, this is unprecedented. Like this has been happening since the 1700s, where the federal government has come in to protect the people of that area. When
when requested, I mean, I'm not against the federal government sending in the under any circumstances.
Yeah, but Newsom is failing.
You have to follow the chain
living minutes from this right now, and he's failing.
Well,
and I'm not going to wait
that he's failing. I mean, that's your opinion.
Sounds like.
Well, where do you
he's failing. That's not how the law works.
Are you right next to the riots right now?
Am I right next to the riots? No, I'm not right next to the riots.
Because I am.
Okay, that's a fallacy you're using there.
Well, hold on.
I'll take that as a fallacy. This has been
allow
done
me.
in
I apologize. I had to go tend to the bratty tomato. She has a little headache. So, did Rob leave?
Yeah,
he ran away. I beat him too bad. He was other people were talking, and I think he quipped that they were making his argument better than him. But I think they also
I think he wanted to be able to have a one-on-one with you on that.
I apologize. The tomato.
He was being sarcastic.
The baby tomato call. So
who's asking me about that scenario? Vibe, was it?
Kissy Cat comes in with a big 20. Says Tomato One Motorsports.
Got him.
And Grid, you gotta get better music. You gotta
I like my music.
He's white.
It's just.
I'm very white.
It's just girly.
It's a little embarrassing.
Girly music's dope. What are you listening to?
It's all free. It's all.
Well, I'm stoked for Sabrina Carpenter's new
licensed
album.
Music, so that I don't get copyrighted because I have a license to use that music.
That's fair.
So here's
hold on.
Okay,
please.
go ahead, sir.
We've got a few to get through. Sarcastic Warlock comes in with a big 5. Says Ryan gave the best response. Cheers from the other side. May the argument chip shatter.
from a fascist sympathizer, and so there you go. See, they see that I see what they see. You know,
you see what the fascists see.
Evan Lord with the Big Ten says, I wanted to make the comment that most American white advocates are not supremacists because they would be willing to be in an interracial marriage. The meme, don't ask a
Pollock. That's what he
There's a lot to unpack there.
What is that comment related to?
I think he's saying that most like quote unquote white advocates are not white supremacists explicitly because they have like black girlfriends and stuff. I'll agree that there's a lot of white people who I would call white supremacists who also have like black girlfriends and black wives. And this is a very weird phenomenon, but I mean it is like they fetishize these people. And you know, like there's also a lot of white supremacists and white nationalists who just watch like interracial porn and stuff, and you know, I wish they would just like be more honest with themselves, like and just be like, oh, they want to have sex with those people, which is fine.
Was white supremacy
I
being
like
debated
how
earlier?
you immediately jump right
Fair
into
enough.
if you don't date black people, you're racist. If you do date black people, you're fetishized.
Oh, I did not say that.
Oh,
I did not say
boy.
that.
You did say that. You said that they're fetishizing.
Awkward. And Sarcastic Warlock
I
with the
said
Big
those
Ten.
people are. Some of them are.
Rob isn't defending fascism, but neocon Operation Trust nonsense. Away with him. Rob isn't. Was that a boot earlier then?
They booted Rob. That's what it is.
Is that a boot? Sarcastic Warlock.
Sounds like it. He said away with him.
That's
Away
a boot.
with him.
Yeah.
But you weren't even.
Das Boot.
Well, I left before I was booted. I avoided. I saw it coming and was like, no, the people on my side were really making my argument for me so good. So I was like, what's the point? Right?
No, I don't think you're being a little facetious there, Rob.
No.
I
a little sardonic.
I do apologize, Rob. I had to step away for my
It's-
daughter, and I had to just kind of leave the panel up to its own demise for a hot minute.
It's all right.
But
It's just when there's a million people talking, it's no one's fault. It's the nature of the panel. The point I was trying to make, Coder, is when it said locations of incidents, I don't know specifically if that was like this suburb of New York versus this suburb. My understanding was that actually it was city to city, but it only did locations because it was withholding the fact that certain of those locations, like Seattle, had like 80 days of violence. And the point is, it's as nonsensical today to say that it's mostly peaceful as it would have been to say during Black Lives Matter that was mostly peaceful. We don't give a shit about the peaceful ones. I disagree with the cause of Black Lives Matter and yet completely support their voices. The problem is we saw riots with near impunity, and it was downplayed by the Democrats who relied on the fact that it was mostly peaceful. That's the argument I'm making.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily agree with the downplaying of it, like, or that people were downplaying. I think people reported pretty extensively on the violence that was happening. It was really well documented, and again, lots of people were charged, many people were convicted. I think that's what's happening now. People are like, there are mostly peaceful protests. There are some people who are doing crimes, and those people are going to get charged. Those people are going to get arrested. I think what we should focus on is not those people, because we don't have to focus on those people. And as long as the LAPD can handle it, and then they can. And if it turns out that they can't, then I'm sure Gavin Newsom would be willing to send the National Guard and agree for the National Guard to come out if they actually need them, which is what it needs to happen for that law that Trump tried to use to be enacted, right? So I just don't see this problem.
So do you think that the same was true in the Black Lives Matter riots? That any time that a city couldn't handle it, those Democrat mayors would have always called in the National Guard?
I don't know every particular case, but yeah, I imagine if there were, for that, if they really needed to, yeah, I suppose they might have, yeah.
So if I wouldn't be able to find like evidence of New York getting out of control, Atlanta getting out of control, Kenosha getting out of control, I wouldn't be able to find evidence
of that. Getting out of control, like to the degree that they need the National Guard to step in?
Yes.
By whose judgment?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would say by the judgment that innocent people were being killed and billions of dollars of property was being destroyed, and the police were basically being told to back off because they didn't have the numbers to quell them.
Yeah, I don't know how many people even died.
Well, I think there was like I'd have to look up the specific, but at least over 24, I think, died during the Black Lives Matter rallies.
Sure, over a few months, right? Over like 3 months.
Like, do you think that it was regrettable that Kyle Rittenhouse used lethal defense and ended up ending people's lives?
Sure.
Do you think it would have been better if the National Guard would have been there to prevent that sort of escalation?
I think that the police that were there, that Kyle Rittenhouse ran up and tried to turn himself into, they probably could have handled that violence if they knew what was going on.
Why didn't they? Did know what was going on.
They didn't know that specific case. They didn't know that specific event. Like they didn't know that like altercation between Kyle and that kid, that first guy. Like they didn't know that was happening until after the fact.
Well, they might not have known about those two individuals, but they knew that there were protesters and counter protesters, or more aptly, protesters that were engaging in violence for nights, and then people that were defending property. They knew that, and they were basically told to stand back. By the way, this was all based on the Jacob Blake lie, that people said that Jacob Blake was.
Yeah, but that has nothing. But you're saying, wouldn't it be regrettable, or isn't it regrettable that Kyle Rittenhouse like shot these people? Of course,
sure.
Of course it is. But like the National Guard being there, if the National Guard wasn't like. Was there and they didn't observe this altercation, then they wouldn't have prevented that either, right?
That's true, but the problem is that the police, we saw night after night that there was violence, and because the governor and the mayor, I believe, of Kenosha both declined Trump's offer to send in the National Guard, what happened was that individuals decided that they were going to take up arms and defend themselves and private property because they could no longer rely on the local government's response, because either through ineptitude, corruption, or the fact that they didn't have resources, they were incapable of protecting property in that city. And so they took matters into their own hands.
When you say incapable of protecting property in the city, I'm not sure I buy into that.
Last question, because I'm getting booted, and I'll leave the answer. The boot's fair.
Fair enough.
Did you say when January
someone
6th
could buy you back? So I'll give it like
I'll
2 minutes.
Back. It's no problem. But January 6th, real quick. Did you say that mostly peaceful Trump rallies?
I mean, they were, but I mean, when I talk about January 6th, like we're talking about people. The primary thing that they were there to do is stop the steal, right?
So most Trump rallies were mostly peaceful. Why did you never? When people said
January
January 6th,
most people there didn't break into the Capitol.
Why didn't you? No, not just that day. 99.9% of Trump rallies were peaceful. So when people focus on January 6th, why didn't you say Trump rallies are mostly peaceful? Why did you focus on January 6th?
Nice, Jason.
Wow.
Because I'm talking. Because when we talk about January 6th, I'm talking about people who tried to stop the peaceful transfer of power.
So when I talk about the riots that we see happening in LA, I'm talking about people that are using violence to prevent the law from being enforced.
Well, I don't know if that's what people are really doing. Those rioters are like what rioters and looters and shit. Like a lot of those people don't care about what's going on. They're just kind of opportunists.
I would say that the vast majority of the people, looters are one thing. The vast majority of the people rioting are doing so because they want to prevent Donald Trump's ICE from deporting illegals.
Sure, and
you disagree?
Yeah, those people should be charged. No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't. Those people should be charged. Though.
So then, why are you deflecting? Why are you deflecting and going? Yeah, but it's
not
mostly
deflecting.
peaceful.
I condemn the violence over and over. I came on your stream and defended it and condemned it the other night.
That is a deflection to say, but I don't know why we're talking about. We should focus on the peaceful people.
What I'm saying is, okay. Wait, it's two things because I'm. It's not a deflection if I engage with you on it, right? If I'm willing to talk to you about the violence and say I condemn it, I'm not. Like, what do you mean deflect? I'm not deflecting it.
I mean, you made it. I'll fully admit I have not heard your entire argument tonight. And so I apologize if I'm misreading something. But in the small exchange I saw, it sounded like what you were saying over and over again was, yeah, but I don't know why we're focusing on these violent people. Most of them are peaceful. And if I made if you came on to talk to me about January 6th, and I made that argument, like, I don't know why we're talking about January 6th. Here was a rally January 5th and 4th and 3rd and 2nd and 1st from Trump that were all peaceful. You'd be like, what the fuck does that have to do?
Sure. So to be clear, my position on when it comes to the violent, like I'm fine with talking about it. I want to talk about it. I want to condemn it. Because I think it's bad and I think it hurts our cause. What I want to make sure we do is we discern between the peaceful protesters who are out there protesting something very specific, which is ICE running around to Home Depots and kidnapping people who are not doing anything wrong, except for being undocumented. Oh, hang on, my screen keeps freezing here.
You still haven't shown any proof that that's happening.
Yeah, okay, and you can take my word for it, and you can say I'm lying.
I don't take your word for shit.
What was the claim that you said and Grid said there's no proof of? I'm so sorry. I'm not trying.
That there are people who are being arrested by ICE without warrants and stuff.
Well, wait a minute. Even if that's the case, is that necessarily illegal? I don't know. I'll have to plead ignorance. Even if that was the case, like do you need a warrant to detain someone that's illegal and then deport them?
I mean, kind of. Like,
can you be detained for no reason?
Yeah, like
well, you could be if you're illegal.
Reason, right?
If like,
how do they know you're illegal?
Yeah, how do?
Let me give you
just because you're in a Home Depot parking lot.
Let me give you an example. Right? Is it illegal for the police officers to pull me over for a DUI checkpoint?
I would say that's an ongoing argument right now. Some people would say yes, it is illegal.
I agree. I actually do have problems with that. But I would wonder if you guys ever criticized that before.
I do all the time. Yeah,
you do. I believe you. I don't know you from Adam, so yeah, sure, fine. What? But
I haven't, but I'm open to it.
Okay, but there's clearly a government precedent for this sort of thing, right?
Sure.
I'm guessing most of the people that are out in the street screaming about this wouldn't have had a problem when that was occurring. Do you think they had a problem when it was occurring? If it's true, I don't have proof in front of me, but there was allegations that everyone that was there on January 6th, that the Biden administration made inquiries into banks and hotels trying to get information on those people. Would you also think that's
a violation of due process? I mean, you know, the Oath Keepers had a stockpile of weapons in a hotel like across the river.
Well, nonetheless, if what I said is true,
so that's probably a good reason for them to be investigating who had those rooms, right?
Well, then fair enough. Based on the same logic, I could say, well, there were people that came with Molotov cocktails and weapons to these protests, so it's okay to violate due process because it was to stop violent people. They were bringing weapons.
Wait, why'd you jump to violating due process? If we're people investigating who got the hotels, that's violating due process?
Yes, I would say that the same logic that you wouldn't want everyone to be investigated that was there even peacefully because there were some people that were violent, that same due process sort of argument should apply to January 6th. If there were people that weren't accused of violence or there was no reasonable suspicion of violence, why should their bank accounts or hotels have been investigated?
They shouldn't be. There should be people who they suspect are involved, right?
Right. Only the people. I'm sorry, Sarah. Go ahead.
Oh, my apologies. I just want to get through a couple super chats. I also have backstage AM Wake Up and Rinyald from Rinyald's Notebook. If any of you would like them to be on screen, you know what to do. You got to boot somebody off the panel to get somebody on the panel. And K2 Keep on Trucking sends the big 5. Oxycat didn't see the first shout out I did, but I'll try again. Oxycat, where's your milk? Can you play her the favorite horse video? Of course we can. Everybody over on Rob's side, shield your eyes.
This message is sponsored in part by...
And of course, Speedy Lee with the Big 10 says, let me be clear, boot Rob, but shots were fired back. John Cassell has pretty much claimed stake to Rob. I'm sorry, Jason. I have a John and I have a Jason, both with the same last name.
Both big fans of mine.
But Jason solidifies Rob's spot on the panel and sends a big hundo to keep Rob. So if you want to boot Rob, you got to match the other 90. Well, I take that back. You got to match a full 100 now because K2 Keep on Trucking made sure we were not going to let that one slide over here. Okay. All right. So you guys know we got the 2 in the back. If you want to see a little panel shakeup, you know what to do. Otherwise, I leave the floor back to you two.
What, Coder, if you don't mind me asking, or Ryan, whatever you prefer to go by, what was
Ryan's fine.
You were talking about neo-fascism with your sort of what can you define fascism?
Yeah, fascism is generally, I mean, historically it was it's obviously manifested in a lot of different ways, but generally I use the phrase like authoritarian ultranationalism is a good working definition.
Okay, so you're not one of these people that say it can only be right wing or left wing.
Oh, I mean, it is a right-wing movement, yeah. But I mean, like, if you're asking me, like I would say, like, Stalinism was a fascist movement. But I would also argue that it was kind of a right-wing movement. But that's a different story.
Okay, so then what? I like the laughter. That is worth laughing about. But what is it like when we criticize something as fascist? What are you really criticizing? So, for example, if we said Trump's response, sending in the National Guard, was fascist, what is the criticism you have? That it's a nationalist movement, or is it the action itself?
So when it comes to the National Guard thing, it's both parts, right? It's authoritarian in that he's overriding the law because he's not taking in Gavin Gavin Newsom's word on, like Newsom's supposed to be involved in the deployment of the National Guard according to the law that Trump cited to do that. And second of all, it's nationalist because I mean, obviously they are finding people who they believe don't belong here. That's the whole thing. They're like trying to find the people who they think they're not part of America. They're not real Americans. Like it's kind of both parts.
Did you find, let's just focus on the authoritarian part. Like the motivation behind it seems to be less important than the acts itself, right? Like, for example, if Trump's team decides to round up a bunch of people because Trump becomes a communist, you would still be against the rounding up. The motivation's less important than the act, correct?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so did you have a problem when we saw like
today?
They
have no other option other than you.
Hey. Did you anyway? Sorry. Did you have a problem when we saw like claims through the Twitter files and elsewhere that after January 6th, there were government agencies that pressured social media companies to censor people that had questions about the 2020 election? Would you call that authoritarian?
My understanding is that they flagged certain accounts. But they didn't like say like, oh, ban these accounts. There was just like a list of accounts that they were like they had these or like shady accounts or whatever. They actually say like ban these people, or was there even like an implied?
In fact, if you're doing that research, right? For the topic that we're going to talk about here in late June, that at least one judge that looked at the case said it was the biggest attack on the First Amendment that he ever saw. Now, granted, the Supreme Court overruled it for a lack of standing, but the evidence strongly suggests that these social media companies felt pressured. In fact, we saw directly when it came for the heads of Twitter, when it came to the censorship of the Hunter Biden laptop story, that internal communications
like 24 hours, right?
What's that?
Wasn't that censored for like 24 hours there?
Well, it's irrelevant. The point I'm trying to make here is that the people at these companies, at the head of them, felt that they were being fucking really pressured by the government. But my point is, even if we just say it was just flagging, isn't that sort of an anti-free speech, sort of authoritarian thing that the government did?
Well, it depends on what they're being flagged for.
Well, let's say criticism, saying that the 2020 election was, I have to be careful, we're on YouTube, I don't want, saying that there were problems of a magnanimous effort in the 2020 election. You get what I'm saying without using the actual word?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's all they were flagged for. I'm not sure.
But let's say it was, for the sake of argument. Would that be okay?
Actually, you don't even need the sake of argument. You have congressional testimony where they put this out over and over throughout the course of months. And Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger and a number of other high-profile journalists were a part of it, and they showed all of the internal communications between the federal government and Twitter,
where
they were specifically saying you need to remove their internal emails showing. You can go back to the Twitter files, as much of a limited hangout as they are. You can go back to them and you can look at internal communications between the Biden administration and Twitter executives, where they're highlighting specific accounts, where they're highlighting specific tweets, saying this has to go, this isn't okay. We would prefer, and yes, they do kind of couch it in a little bit of more nicer political.
So they're not just saying this has to go. But to be clear, you're saying they're couching in language. So they're not saying that it has to go.
Okay,
right?
It's an implied directive with the threat of punishment on the back end. So in diplomatic
actually
circles,
explicitly
I'm
asked for
not
tweets
sure
to be taken
what
down.
else you would expect. Because do you think that people are going
Sarah,
to give
I've got
over
to jump
threats?
off. I've got. I'm going. Yeah, I'm going fishing. I got to get up at 5 a.m.
Take care, Grid. Hope
you guys have a great rest of your night. Enjoy
Grid.
Enjoy the rest of the train wreck as it unfolds. Please don't get any on it.
Stay safe.
Hey, we'll talk to you soon, Grid.
What's that?
We'll talk to you soon.
I want you to touch me, baby.
And AM,
you
got 10 minutes in the back, okay? And then let me just put just to make sure. Crazy Rooster.
No.
Hello. Okay. Yeah, that's.
It doesn't work, Rooster.
Yeah. All right. We're not going to play that game. All right. Sorry. continue on.
So Donald Trump. Hang on, real quick, Rob. Donald Trump specifically asked Twitter to take down the post of Chrissy Teigen calling him a pussy ass bitch, which is hilarious because he is a pussy ass bitch.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I have a problem with that. I actually also have a problem with Trump sort of paying lip service to his administration, saying that Terry Moran should be suspended or fired. I don't particularly like that, but the magnitude of those two people facing some sort of consequence that will basically led to nothing versus millions of people being banned off social media from certain subjects seems to be completely different. And so I don't disagree with what AM was saying, but the problem, AM, is this. Like, what'll happen is you'll say, but this did happen, and Ryan will say, prove it, and then you'll spend 3 hours going through a piece of evidence. I'm not saying that that's not an appropriate discussion to have, but in the long form panel, I'll just ask for the sake of argument, Ryan, if that did happen, right, without us proving it, just hypothetically, if it happened, if people in the Biden administration pressured social media to censor posts because they contained what they thought was disinformation about the 2020 election, do you think that that's authoritarian and something that we should criticize?
Wait, hang on. Somebody clarify this for me because I might be confused. What time span does the Twitter files reference?
I don't know. It references slight at the beginning of the Trump administration or the end of the Trump administration with the pandemic, but then goes largely into the Biden administration.
And this is where I'm thinking, right? So when you're talking about like the suppressing of like the Hunter Biden laptop, from what I'm looking at, that looks like October 2020.
Correct.
Who was the administration in charge of the U.S. government in October of 2020?
Irrelevant.
It was Trump, right?
Irrelevant. It's irrelevant to this point, right? It's irrelevant to the fact that
you're arguing the U.S. government was.
Does Donald Trump? So you would argue that every single governmental employee that was there under Joe Biden was operating at the behest of Joe Biden, and he's responsible for all their actions?
I mean, that's what I hear argued all the time.
Well, I think you're arguing with morons then. Like, it's clear.
It might be possible. Yeah, that's true.
Right. Get a better caliber of opponent. It's clear that there were people within these agencies that were not Trump supporters. For example, is it your real argument that you think 51 former intel agents and people within that still had security clearances that were there when Donald Trump was in office were censoring the Hunter Biden laptop story because they were helping Trump?
Couldn't it just be because they thought it was misinformation?
It could be theoretically, but why don't they step in? Why is it always when they step in
about
about misinformation,
it goes one direction? About the laptop had to do with the explicit images of his son in there.
But that wasn't what
other stuff.
But that wasn't what was going on. So, for example, there was this meeting that occurred in the Aspen Institute, and I forget the name of the agency through the government that was putting on this hearing, but it had a bunch of these social media places, and it was talking about Russian disinformation to affect the 2020 election. And it specifically said that, hypothetically, what if, this is going to blow your mind, what if there were accusations made that someone in the Biden family worked for corrupt groups in places like Ukraine? Well, this would be a good example of Russian disinformation to censor the 2020 election. So the people at Twitter admitted, and I think Zuckerberg's admitted this as well, though I could be wrong, that they were primed for this exact story, not because it had Hunter Biden pictures of him nude, but because the allegations made forth were something that the intel agencies knew. They knew about this laptop. They knew the information and it was accurate. And so they were priming media to not just censor. The censorship's not even really the problem. It was the fact that it was censored for a moment, and then the American people were like, wow, that's unprecedented that this was censored, that these intel officials came out and said this is garbage, so no one believed the story.
Yeah, but isn't the worst story on the Hunter Biden laptop like a meeting that was appointed for like $700,000, right? It was like a Gazprom meeting for $700,000, and isn't that like the biggest story on the Hunter Biden laptop?
No,
because like we can talk about $1 million deals that go on inside of the Middle East when it comes to Trump's family. But like when you look at the Hunter Biden laptop, it's not that big of a deal. Like, yeah, it's some level of corruption, but goddamn, we're talking about millions of dollars being traded in the Middle East when it comes to Trump's family.
First, polling suggested that 1/3 of Democrats said that they may have changed their vote if they understood that the Hunter Biden laptop story was true. Second, it's not just that Hunter Biden was making money from these corrupt foreign institutions. It's that it was happening while his dad was the point person for weeding out corruption in those very same areas. For example,
I don't think people would change their mind, though. I think even if they had the facts on the Hunter Biden laptop, they wouldn't have changed their minds.
Even if
like we went through, he grabbed them by the blank, right? We lived through that. We have lived through time after time again of, oh, this should end someone's political campaign, but it doesn't. So, like, I think even if people got the full story of the Hunter Biden laptop, half of the people that should be listening to would have been in denial. They wouldn't have cared. And the other half would have fought and wouldn't have cared.
Even if you start with something so small and minuscule and what seems very unimportant, usually that means it can get bigger and bigger and bigger to other things, right? So, just the same as if somebody lies to you about something it was really small and tiny and minuscule, it didn't matter, then what else are they willing to do with the bigger stuff, right? So I think the whole Hunter laptop thing, because it just shows that if they're willing to cover that up just for one thing, then what else are they willing to do?
Well, and that was part of the FBI was doing it on behalf of the campaign for Biden, and they were in cahoots with both big tech and the FBI to basically spread out false narratives about it and to willfully choosing not to let it get out.
Is it truly? Sorry, Rob, you can go. I know you've been trying.
There's several arguments to make about this.
I'm gonna go to the bathroom real quick. Seems like you guys have got this one down, so I'll be back.
Lost my train of thought a little there, but to do it in reverse order, whoever that was just talking there. The real story here is it doesn't matter if it would have changed one vote. What matters is that our government agencies were putting their thumb on the scale of the election in order to attempt to help one party win. That's the problem. Post hoc justifying by saying, well, we don't think it would have changed votes anywhere is irrelevant to the whole conversation. However, if we delve deep into this, no, it's not just a matter of, it was as simple as he made money at Gazprom, but haven't people in Trump's family made money as well? The problem was the exact nature of this political attack. One, when you look at what this was saying, it was saying that Hunter Biden did things like work for, and I'm quoting now, the spy chief of China, which most people in this country would think were the biggest foreign adversaries that we had. Secondly, it showed that the attacks on Trump, other than the pandemic, that were the most successful and the most used by Democrats, were his connection to a hostile foreign power. So if it turned out that actually Joe Biden himself said Zlochevsky, the guy that was running Burisma that his son was working for, was working as a hostile Russian oligarch, that would seem to take away one of their biggest offensive weapons against Trump and prove him to be a hypocrite and a liar. And the last thing was, I'm open to hearing any discussions of corruption of the Trump family. Can you show me him, or for that matter, any president in the history of this country that has issued a quid pro quo to the tune of any amount of serious taxpayer dollars to force the firing of a prosecutor? Can anyone show me in the history of the United States that ever occurring?
And not just a prosecutor in a foreign country.
Right. Well, not just a prosecutor in a foreign country, but leave them answer first, and then we'll get to the...
Hang on. Wait. I remember Donald Trump making a very good phone call in 2019, right? I remember him making a very, so like if in my opinion, that is a certain level of pressure when you literally have a president calling the Ukrainians
wasn't one, the difference was one was official State Department policy and one was a president looking to get dirt on his political opponents? Wasn't that the difference of those two situations?
Several things. Well, show me the official...
from the executive branch.
Show me the official State Department policy before Joe Biden issued that quid pro quo. Go ahead.
What do you mean?